one thing that stuck in my head ever since was the radio broadcast on the Sunday morning, on Sunday, when the bulletins gave out, that this a bomb explosion. It was an IRA own goal.
And within 12 hours, the senior RUC inspectors on the scene, they had to write up a report called the duty officer's report, and basically they started telling lies. They started in this report saying that the bomb exploded. It was brought to the bar by a known member of the Provisional IRA to be collected by another known member of the Provisional IRA to be taken to somewhere else, and the bomb had exploded prematurely inside the bar. But where did all that come from?
These stories were given out by Thiefville Barracks over in Lisburn. They were told, they were given statements out by the police and by the army, and that was it. So rather than go and investigate it, they were just given what to write, and that was it.
The very first talk was they were making the bomb inside. And those who were inside knew what was going on, so they were all classed as bombers.
If you get a statement from the RUC headquarters, that's what the journalists, it was lazy, shoddy journalism, and in a way they were colluding with the state and just instead of trying to do their own investigative journalism.
The following morning, the RUC put this disinformation into black and white, and from our archive research, this is where the disinformation began. This is where the black propaganda emanated from.
The story that was put out that it was an IRA goal, well, that was it. We were IRA, we were Republicans, we were terrorists. They caused it to themselves, they don't deserve anything.
You have eyewitnesses' reports, literally from within hours. If you go back to the RTE recordings at the time, there's actually a statement from a young boy who was a newspaper boy, and he actually seen the car pulling up. He sees the man getting out, going over, lighting the package and running back to the car, and then the car driving off. And as it drove past him, he actually saw the Union Jack sticker on the back of the car. So he's given this evidence to the RTE and was then given it to the police. But instead of accepting that evidence, plus the evidence of other eyewitnesses who witnessed the actual bombing itself, instead of accepting that, the police just concentrated on this fictitious idea that it was a so-called own goal, which is a heinous term to describe any atrocity, but I mean that's what they kept calling it, an IRA own goal.
14 years of age, I was wondering. I didn't know who to believe. I didn't know what to believe, listening to my father and that. I mean, yes, they knew. My father was saying there was nobody in the bar. We weren't doing anything. They were sitting there. He remembers. He talked about his smell and all that there. I mean, my father was telling the truth.
The sort of pub Paddy McGurk ran was you weren't even allowed to curse in it, and that went for everybody. You know what I mean? There was no politics. Actually, the RUC drunk in the pub. You know what I mean? There was a barracks there called Glenravell Street Barracks, and the RUC would call in and have a drink. That's the sort of pub Paddy McGurk run.
McGurk's was a Christian boy, I may as well say. Paddy McGurk was a real great man. Didn't allow any cursing. He called anybody cursing, he had to swear backs out, making you put money on it.
Paddy McGurk, I always remember, black and white television set, with the thing, and coming on the television saying that not only did he pray for the people who have been killed and injured, he prayed for the people that planted the bomb. Now that, you can't get any better Christianity attitude about things when he had lost his wife, his daughter, his business. He had been injured himself, his business had been wrecked, and he's coming out with a statement like that within a very short period after the bomb had happened. I just found that, very uplifting that he could do that,
So here you had three senior RUC inspectors basically fabricating the story, and that was the initial lie about the bomb. And then as the days went on, it grew legs. Do you know what I mean? Brian Faulkner brought it to, when he had to go to London to explain what was happening, he then takes the lie with him on the Monday. And this isn't me talking in that sense. We now have official government documents that are stamped private, confidential, but under the 30-year rule or the 40-year rule, in this case, the families have got access to them. So we can prove categorically that the Prime Minister of the time starts embellishing the story, and even at one point in his account, his written account, we have the minutes of the meeting with the British Home Secretary, he starts to say that he, as Prime Minister, has now instructed the RUC not to investigate the bombers, but to put their time and energy into investigating the families to see if any of them have got IRA sympathies or if they got IRA connections. So he's actually interfering in the biggest mass murder of people in the history of the 6-county state.
On the 16th of December 1971, less than 2 weeks after the bombing, the RUC Chief Constable, during the Joint Security Committee meeting, stood in front of the Northern Ireland Prime Minister, the Minister of State for Home Affairs and the General Officer Command of the British Forces in the North at that time, and told them directly that 2 of our family members were known IRA terrorists. This, of course, was a blatant lie and has never been substantiated in any evidence that has been presented to us by the HET or the Police Ombudsman.
Within 6 or 7 hours after that bomb went off, and they kept this up, and they spread them lies all around the world.
And then the next day you have John Taylor, who was Minister for Home Affairs. He stands up in Stormont Parliament and says basically what he was, the same lie that he's been fed previously by the RUC. And then the British Army, in their reports, you call them sit reps or situation reports. We have a number of them for the 6th and the 14th, where they're actually expanding that 5 of the people who were killed in the bar, we now know that they must have been standing around it. So they're trying to give this impression of 5 people standing around a bomb, i.e. as if they were manufacturing it and it exploded. And they were saying, the forensic evidence now proves that the bomb was inside the bar and it was being made by the people inside the bar. The forensic reports weren't even made public until February 1972. So this is, you know what I mean, in the days after the explosion. All these people start concocting these stories.
When I heard the statement a couple of days later about young McCrory, the young newspaper boy, seeing someone at the bar, I said, now that sounds more like what had happened. And the interview, he had done an interview with RTE very shortly, but afterwards. And when I seen the thing about the interview, I said, well, that seems more like what had happened. And it wasn't long afterwards when we were starting to get my thoughts together about how this all happened, I realised, this wasn't meant for McGurk's. If this was the guys wanting to plant a bomb, the one that they'd have been wanting to hit was the GM. And the propaganda had been ready and set when the bomb went off, and the propaganda would all come in, bang, bang, bang. There's an IRA unit, etc., an IRA bomb.
And even when he started to get the forensics, and the forensics were starting to prove that the families weren't, in other words, that some of the people whose bodily injuries included shrapnel wounds of wood. In other words, there was a door between them and the bomb, and then the bomb exploded, blew the door apart, and then they were getting shreds of wood as part of their injuries.
And in fact, my father-in-law and a couple of others had wooden splinters in their back, which sort of proved there was a wooden structure between them and the bomb.
All that would have told you that the bomb was outside. Do you understand? That was never brought up. In fact, it was repressed when it came to the inquest.
Now, what we didn't know at the time, which we subsequently found out, and I was really miffed about this point, was that they had got other forensic reports as well, not only Dr. Hall's report. They had got other reports about the clothing of the injured and the people who were killed, and not all the forensic of their clothing showed not one of them had any sort of element been near a bomb itself. We've seen the paperwork. They had that information weeks before the inquest, yet they didn't release it. They didn't mention it at the inquest, and that would have shown clearly, confirmed along with the forensic, pathology, his report, that the bomb was planted by others. Yet they didn't do that, and I couldn't take it in. That here was the people supposed to uphold the law, supposed to be looking after the law. I can understand people making mistakes and doing things, but deliberately holding information back in connection with that there, which would have cleared the whole matter at that point in time, and they didn't do that.
And that still kept on and on and on, even after Robert Campbell was convicted.
In July 1977, Robert James Campbell was arrested for terrorist activity, and during questioning by police, which didn't seem too heavy, I hasten to add, he admitted that he was in the car that had bombed McGurk's bar in 1971. He also admitted to planning the killing of John Morrow, a Protestant worker who had been driving a van in West Belfast whenever it was attacked by his platoon. Mr. Morrow saved the lives of many people in the back who happened to be Catholics, but he himself was killed.
And we were told, and one officially, he was told to give himself up because he killed a Protestant instead of a Catholic.
In March 1976, the head of the CID in Belfast was given a list of 5 names of 5 UVF people who were believed to be responsible for McGurk's. So a year later, when Robert James Campbell was arrested for something else, but admitted to being responsible for McGurk's or being part of the team, if you go back and look at the original list, do you understand? His name is at the top of it. So if his name's true out of the 5 names, what do you think you should do with the other 4 names? Do you understand? At the very least, you would think they should be arrested